He entered the courtroom to lend a hand to a friend, only to find himself sprawled face down on the floor. Elijah Cross, a 62-year-old retired Navy SEAL, took the stand to testify in a civil case, bearing evidence that might rescue a fellow veteran. Yet, a white officer cast aside the glint of metals, focusing solely on the color of his skin, and forcefully brought him down to the pavement. Before a hushed assembly and a judge who offered no words, Elijah rose, bloodied yet unbowed, bearing the weight of his humiliation with unwavering resolve. What could possibly lead a celebrated hero to be regarded as a criminal in the land he so valiantly endeavored to safeguard? If this gave you a moment of reflection, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Mr. Mac's Stories for more impactful, authentic tales from real life. Let us return to that courtroom in Birmingham. Elijah Cross appeared anything but menacing. At the age of 62, he donned a simple gray coat, his attire marked by an air of somber elegance. Without a uniform, there are no medals to be earned. A solitary figure traversed the echoing corridors of the Jefferson County Courthouse, a well-worn leather folder clutched in his hand. He walked with a straight back, each step firm and unwavering. Yet, within his gaze lingered a narrative untold, a tale of battles waged far from familiar shores, and within the very heart of his own existence. He was not present for his own sake. He arrived to provide testimony for his longtime friend Marcus Hale, a fellow veteran and amputee who had unexpectedly been denied his disability benefits by the city. Elijah bore with him the evidence that had the potential to alter the course of the entire case. As he approached courtroom tube, a figure clad in uniform obstructed his way. Officer Trent Malloy positioned himself at the door, arms folded, a badge shining with an almost ostentatious pride on his chest. He was Caucasian, in his mid-30s, and moved with the air of someone who believed the uniform conferred upon him the authority to determine who was worthy of belonging and who was not. Malloy cast a deliberate gaze over Elijah, taking in every detail from head to toe. "Are you certain this is where you belong?" he inquired, his tone laced not with curiosity, but with a hint of amusement. Elijah offered a serene nod. "Indeed, I received a subpoena to provide testimony in the Hale case. The following documents are intended for the court's review." Malloy cast a fleeting look at the folder, yet remained still, making no effort to reach for it. His gaze sharpened. "You arrived by yourself, without legal representation. I was not requested to bring one. I stand as a witness, not as a participant in the case." Malloy let out a brief, quiet chuckle. "Indeed, witnesses typically don't enter the scene with the demeanor of someone ready to settle a parking ticket." Elijah remained unresponsive. "I must ensure this reaches the clerk prior to the hearing." Malloy advanced purposefully, obstructing the path ahead. His voice took on a chill. "Feel free to entrust it to me. I will ensure it reaches its destination." Elijah's voice held a calm and unwavering tone. "With all due respect, officer, these documents are certified medical records issued by the government. I received directives to present them face to face." Malloy inclined his head ever so slightly. "Your words carry an air of significance, yet they seem to lack true weight." Elijah locked eyes with him. "Indeed it does. Listen," Malloy said, his voice dropping to a more cutting tone. "You desire to be regarded with sincerity and respect. Perhaps arrive with an appearance befitting a courthouse setting." "I dedicated 3 decades of my life to the Navy," Elijah replied. "I have found myself in spaces where the stakes were nothing less than existence itself. This is not unfamiliar territory for me." Malloy's smile faded away. "In that case, you must be aware of the consequences that arise when individuals disregard established protocol. Step back. Entry is not permitted." Elijah clenched the folder tighter, his voice remaining steady and low. "I did not arrive here to plead. I have arrived to bear witness." A hush enveloped the corridor. A handful of individuals cast their gazes from the bench situated outside the room. A clerk stationed behind the desk glanced up. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Malloy's jaw tightened with resolve. "You have but a fleeting moment to act, lest I compel you to do so." "I haven't broken any law," Elijah stated, his demeanor remaining composed. "You are the one obstructing justice at this moment." That was all it required. Malloy pushed him forcefully. The folder soared from Elijah's grasp, pages strewn haphazardly across the ground. Elijah faltered, crashing to the earth with a muted thump. A nearby child inhaled sharply, glancing up at his mother. Why did that man shove him, Mama? He was simply idle. The mother cast her gaze downward, her thoughts tangled in uncertainty, searching for the right words to express herself. Elijah meticulously collected the papers, each one a deliberate act in the quiet of the room. A slender streak of crimson traced his palm where he had fallen. He remained silent. A young woman approached him, pausing momentarily, caught in a web of uncertainty about whether to offer her assistance. "Are you feeling well, sir?" Elijah lifted his gaze, his eyes serene yet burdened. "I have faced greater blows, yet it was not for a lack of effort in pursuing what was just." He rose to his feet. Not with fury, not with humiliation, but with the grace of one who has chosen to stand firm against oblivion. Malloy fixed his gaze upon him, striving to maintain his composure, yet an undeniable change had occurred. The onlookers had witnessed the unfolding events. Silence enveloped them, a moment suspended in time, waiting for the right words to emerge. Yet they beheld. This marked merely the inception of what was to come. The folder fell to the earth before he made contact. A sharp crack of leather meeting the cold tile. Then came the papers, scattering like leaves caught in a gust, gliding across the cold courthouse floor, as if they too sought to flee from the weight of what had just transpired. Elijah Cross sank to one knee, his palm harshly grazing the sharp edge of a marble step. A sudden jolt of agony blossomed in his ribs, yet he remained silent. Instead, he raised his gaze gradually, his breath suspended in a liminal space between agony and incredulity. He locked eyes with Officer Trent Malloy. Malloy remained in place, his chest inflated, arms rigid. I refused to offer an apology, unyielding, merely observing as if it were an ordinary part of the day. Silence enveloped the hallway. A handful of individuals had caught sight of it. A mother accompanied by her young son, a clerk gazing intently from her desk, her eyes scanning the room. A man in a suit halted mid-sentence, his phone clutched in his hand, yet momentarily overlooked. And then came Marcus Hale. From across the room, Marcus was already attempting to propel his wheelchair forward, the wheels emitting a soft squeak beneath his weight. His voice resonated powerfully, undeterred by the expanse between. "He's the man who rescued me from the hail of gunfire in Kandahar. He pulled me across the sand, a bullet lodged in his own leg." He remained silent, offering no defense for Elijah as a friend. He bellowed it as if warning a crowd in a theater, where everyone feigned ignorance to the acrid scent of smoke wafting through the air. Elijah, sprawled on the ground, let a thin line of blood trickle onto the side of his sleeve. His hand quivered, yet his voice remained steady. "You may try to bring me low, yet I shall remain upright." Malloy began to speak, but a noise from the side cut him off. A diminutive, inquisitive whisper. "Mom, why is that officer causing him pain?" All eyes shifted. A young boy, perhaps 7 or 8, grasped tightly to the fabric of his mother's coat. His eyes were wide, and his hands clenched into tight fists. He appeared bewildered, not shedding tears, but rather lost in thought. His mother remained silent, not immediately. She bowed her head as though wishing the moment would slip by without the necessity of words. Yet the moment lingered on. It grew more profound. A soft whisper floated through the space, an undercurrent of discomfort, subtle yet unmistakable, a silence so profound that it stirs an unspoken urge within people, compelling them to break the stillness. Yet they remain paralyzed by fear or the weight of habit, hesitant to be the first to utter a word. Then the judge made his entrance. Robert Langley, a tall figure with white hair, adorned in a robe that seemed untouched by the passage of time. He entered the room, his gaze momentarily glancing across the hallway, yet he remained silent regarding the figure sprawled on the floor. There is no mention of the blood. There is no information regarding the scattered folder. He cast a brief glance at Malloy, offered a subtle nod, and then shifted his attention to the bench. It felt as though it had never occurred at all, as though the very system had closed its eyes, choosing to remain oblivious. With one hand braced against the wall, Elijah started to lift himself up, leisurely, excruciating. Every muscle screamed in defiance, yet his pride forbade any hint of doubt. A solitary drop of blood trickled from the edge of his mouth, yet his gaze remained steadfastly fixed ahead. A young clerk approached him, bent low, and started to gather the scattered papers. Her hands quivered slightly. Elijah gazed at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "My sincere gratitude to you." She remained silent. She hurriedly gathered the documents, each touch feeling like an unspoken agreement with the truth they held. Malloy took a step back, yet his posture remained resolute. He regarded Elijah with the air of someone burdened by an unwelcome presence, not a man who had wagered it all for the nation they both professed to uphold. Elijah rose to his full height, blood still seeping from his wounds, clutching the folder as if it were a weapon requiring no ammunition. With deliberate slowness, he approached the imposing courtroom doors. This time, no one stood in his way. This time, no one stood in his way. Not due to their granting of permission. A change had occurred. Not every soul in that hallway would recall his name, yet they would undoubtedly remember the manner in which he rose to the occasion. Calm and composed. Unyielding. A man who steadfastly resisted the forces of oblivion, and that, in some inexplicable way, resonated more powerfully than any outcry. For a fleeting instant, the atmosphere in the courtroom grew so silent that it seemed as if time itself had been rendered breathless. Marcus Hale clenched his jaw, his gaze fixed on Elijah as he fought to regain his footing. His hands quivered ever so slightly, not out of fear, but from a deep-seated rage, from a state of powerlessness. He started to push his chair ahead, his chest heaving rhythmically, the ache from his missing leg fading away as his instinct to shield surged within him. Yet, just as the front wheels grazed the aisle, a bailiff intervened. Silence enveloped them, a single hand resting gently on Marcus's shoulder. Weighty, intentional. Marcus lifted his gaze. The bailiff slowly shook his head once. "Don't make it worse," he murmured, his voice barely rising above a whisper, meant only for her ears. More unfortunate. More unfortunate." It felt as though defending a friend who had once pulled his broken form from the clutches of an ambush had become an offense in itself. Marcus's eyes blazed, not with tears, but with a fury he could not allow to escape. He tensed his fists, gripping the armrests tightly. In the far corner of the room, Elijah knelt on one knee. His fingers moved with a certain rigidity, collecting the pages that had scattered from his folder like shattered feathers. He remained silent. He refrained from using any profanity. Every motion was hushed, deliberate. His hand trembled as he extended it toward another sheet, yet his gaze remained unwavering, his jaw clenched tight. It was not frailty that quivered within him, but control. A bond shaped by enduring battles and even more protracted moments of quietude. A young woman observed him from the third bench back, her phone nestled just within the confines of her coat sleeve. Maya Jackson, a dedicated law student. It was my inaugural experience witnessing a civil case unfold in person. Her professor had claimed it would be enlightening. She had not anticipated encountering an event that resonated more as a reckoning than as a mere legal proceeding. Her hands trembled, yet she managed to steady the phone recording without lifting it. Her eyes glimmered with an enchanting light. She did not shed a tear. Not precisely, yet something within her shattered, and what poured forth was not compassion. It was acknowledgement. Then the voice emerged. "Take a seat, young man." Officer Trent Malloy refrained from raising his voice. There was no necessity for him to do so. His words hung in the air, chilling the atmosphere around us. The offense lay not within the word itself, but rather in the inflection of the voice, the very essence of the tone that Maya's grandfather had recounted from tales of the South, where men donned uniforms and believed that authority was derived from the badge rather than from a foundation of integrity. Elijah stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. Only for a fleeting moment. He raised his gaze gradually, not in anger but with a calmness that amplified the sting of the insult. Silence enveloped him. He remained unyielding. He turned to the next page, as though Malloy's words had vanished into thin air. The stillness resonated like a storm waiting to break. In their midst, stillness reigned. Silence enveloped the room, as no one stepped forward to voice their thoughts. No one exited the scene. Some shifted in their seats, a wave of discomfort washing over them. Several averted their gaze. Others gazed forward, expressions vacant as if molded from stone, conditioned to overlook. A man sat in the back, his notepad poised as he scribbled furiously, though it remained a mystery whether his words captured the essence of the trial or the unfolding scene before his eyes. A young boy, the same one who had inquired of his mother moments before, leaned in closer and whispered, "Mom, why is he bleeding?" His mother quieted him gently, her hand cradling his head, yet her gaze remained fixed on Elijah. The atmosphere in that room was thick with an unspoken tension. It was a yielding, an unspoken understanding that this was the way of the world, that a man of color could be forcefully thrown to the ground for merely appearing in court, with the only noise that ensued being the rustling of papers and the smirk of an officer. Yet Maya perceived it. She captured it on film. Her hand trembled incessantly. Elijah collected the final page and carefully returned it to the folder. It had lost its tidy appearance. The edges were crumpled. A faint line of crimson smeared along the top, a remnant of where his lip had bled. Yet he clutched it tightly against his heart as if it carried profound significance. For that very reason, it did. He ascended to his full stature, not in haste, nor with flair, but with a quiet resolve, embodying a strength that seeks no spotlight yet stands unwavering. He averted his gaze from Malloy. There was no necessity for him to do so. In that instant, every gaze in the room was acutely aware of what had transpired, even as they feigned ignorance, and not a soul stirred. In that fleeting instant, silence enveloped the courtroom. Not the sort of stillness that offers tranquility, but rather the kind that envelops you, as if the very air has grown dense. Every gaze was drawn to the movement, the sound, the descent. They observed a man ascending, not merely Elijah, but another figure as well. A voice pierced the stillness, steady, weathered, and undeniably commanding. Elijah Cross, a figure of intrigue, commanded attention as an older white man in the second row rose to his feet. He stood tall, broad-shouldered despite the passage of time, clad in a dark gray suit adorned with a small American flag pin at the lapel. His eyes, steely and clear, were fixed on the judge's bench before shifting directly to the man on the floor. He guided SEAL Team 6 into the heart of Kandahar. With unwavering determination, he bore the weight of 3 wounded men on his back, all while under the relentless barrage of enemy fire. I was among them. It was Robert Langley, a retired major general, a figure whose name resonated with authority in military circles, his service adorned with countless decorations. A man of few words, choosing silence until the moment called for significance. And at last, he had uttered his words. Malloy's jaw tightened with resolve. The smirk that frequently adorned his face had disappeared. He shifted on his feet, caught in a web of uncertainty, torn between the gazes of Langley, Elijah, and the judge, who sat immobile in her chair, her gavel resting silently beside her. Langley maintained a calm demeanor, his voice steady and unraised. There was no necessity for him to do so. The power of truth whispers softly. It remains steadfast. A uniform is not a prerequisite for earning respect. He acquired it through sacrifice and quietude. He never sought the sound of applause. He approached Elijah with a deliberate grace, the sort that only those who have laid their comrades to rest in distant lands can truly embody. In silence, Langley halted 3 feet before Elijah, lifting his right hand in a sharp military salute. The courtroom was suffocatingly still. Elijah raised his gaze. For a fleeting moment, his eyes revealed a glimmer of anguish, not from the impact he'd endured, but from the burden of being acknowledged for something he had never wished to wield as a defense. He arrived in this place as an observer, not a combatant. He had arrived to assist a friend, not to revisit the horrors of war. Across the aisle, Marcus Hale's hand quivered as he clutched the wheel of his chair. His voice trembled as he leaned closer to Maya and whispered, a secret he had never shared with anyone, not even me. Maya brushed her cheek, determined to prevent a tear from staining her phone. Though her camera continued to capture the moment, her attention had wandered elsewhere. What she beheld in that moment transcended mere injustice. It was a rupture in the very essence of the system. A fleeting instant when the truth entered, wounded and voiceless. And at last, someone had summoned the courage to name it. An older spectator, a Vietnam veteran evident by his worn POW Mia hat, nodded slowly, his lips pressed together in contemplation. A woman clad in professional attire cast her gaze downward and adjusted her position in her seat, seemingly coming to the realization that she had been among those who remained silent for far too long. Yet, the judge remained silent. Langley allowed his arm to drop, then faced the gallery and remarked, "Do you wish to discuss dignity in this courtroom? Begin by observing the man who remains upright, despite your attempts to bring him down." He cast one last glance at Elijah, nodded slightly, and settled back into his seat. The ensuing silence was devoid of contempt. It was infused with shame, tinged with awe, and carried the essence of that first breath after surfacing from the depths of water, a moment suspended in time. Elijah remained expressionless. There was no necessity for him to do so. He collected the final sheet of paper, smoothing it out with deliberate care, and raised his chin with quiet determination. In that instant, the room ceased to perceive a man clad in tattered garments. They beheld a figure of legend, a soul who had never sought to be perceived in such a manner. And yet, his name reverberated through every corner of that courtroom. The morning following the incident, Maya Jackson found herself seated in solitude within her dorm room, her gaze fixed on the upload screen. Her hands lingered above the trackpad, filled with hesitation. She had altered nothing, included no text, no sound, merely the unvarnished reality of what she had witnessed. Elijah Cross was forcefully brought down to the earth. The hush that ensued, the gesture that shattered it. She murmured softly to herself, akin to a sacred invocation, before pressing the post button. In less than an hour, her phone buzzed incessantly. By midday, the video had surpassed 1 million views. As darkness fell, it had multiplied twofold. Responses poured in from all corners of the nation. Some were left in shock, others seethed with anger, and many spoke only 2 words that linger in my memory. Headlines surged forth in rapid succession, competing for attention across news feeds and television screens. A war hero faced an assault in the courtroom. A SEAL cast aside, enveloped in quietude. A decorated veteran was assaulted prior to his testimony. Though unspoken, the shared understanding of the true events lingered in the air, palpable among them all. It transcended the mere act of a man being brought to the ground. It revolved around his identity and the reasons behind the treatment he received from the outset. Marcus Hale, grappling with the aftermath of witnessing his friend's tragic fall, consented to an interview with a local reporter. He lingered in his modest apartment, the medals gleaming on the shelf behind him, his voice a raspy yet resonant echo of past triumphs. He remarked that America referred to him as a ghost soldier. He undertook the tasks that others shied away from discussing. Once more, they desire his presence to fade into the shadows. The ensuing silence weighed more than any words he had uttered. As the sun dipped below the horizon, veterans from every corner of the nation started to share their stories. Several individuals were seated in wheelchairs, a few clad in uniform. Some wept quietly. They spoke not just of Elijah, but of the subtle disappearance that so many had experienced. A man who had saved lives, who had borne the weight of carrying others through the chaos of war, found himself in a courtroom where he was met with suspicion, despite having every right to be there. A hashtag came into existence by sheer happenstance. A single remark had brought it to a close. In the cloak of night, it permeated every corner. "Stand in solidarity with Elijah." Maya reclined, her gaze fixed on the ascending figures. She observed the anchors striving to maintain a composed expression as they delivered the headlines. She observed her former military comrades sharing videos, photographs, and letters. There were whispers of Elijah among them. Others unveiled their own tales, long overlooked and shrouded in the weight of silence accumulated over the years. A certain clip captured widespread attention and went viral. An elderly man with silver hair, his hands shaking, lifted a worn photograph depicting 4 soldiers in uniform. He gestured toward the figure lingering at the rear. "He rescued me on 2 separate occasions, in a distant land known as Afghanistan. And once yesterday, he reminded me that silence serves no purpose for anyone." Yet, in the face of the mounting tempest, Elijah Cross remained silent. He refrained from convening a press conference. He refrained from issuing a statement. Not a single word escaped his lips. He returned to Birmingham and settled onto the front steps of Marcus's apartment, clutching the folder of wrinkled papers he had managed to collect from the courtroom floor. And yet, throughout the nation, that silence resonated more powerfully than any oration. Calls came in from journalists. Advocates took to the streets in a powerful display of unity. Even a handful of cautious and deliberate politicians called for inquiries. Yet, Elijah chose to stay silent. It was never about him, not quite. It revolved around the consequences that unfolded when a system lost sight of its purpose and the very entities it was designed to safeguard. A radio host in Chicago concluded his segment that night, his voice wavering ever so slightly. "Perhaps Elijah need not utter a single word," he remarked. "At long last, the nation is voicing its support for it." In a quiet corner of Birmingham, away from the clamor of publicity, Elijah Cross observed a young boy pedaling down the street, a small flag fluttering in his hand, adorned with 3 hastily written words in marker. "Stand in solidarity with Elijah." They believed that silence would serve as his shield. Yet the silence had become an overwhelming presence impossible to overlook. By the following morning, the courthouse steps in downtown Birmingham were bustling with activity. In the soft glow of dawn, veterans clad in weathered uniforms and civilians grasping hand-painted signs stood united, shoulder to shoulder. At the forefront of the assembly, Marcus Hale, remaining in his wheelchair, his navy cap drawn low, raised a sign high above his head. It proclaimed in bold, quivering strokes, "He fought for you." By noon, the news crews had made their arrival. Flashes of cameras illuminated the scene. The throng swelled with each passing hour. Within the confines of the courthouse, Officer Trent Molloy remained steadfast in his commitment to duty. His badge shimmered, untouched by the chaos that had unfolded. His boots echoed down the marble hallway, each step infused with a distinct swagger. Yet the gazes surrounding him had transformed. Some averted their gaze, others focused. Pressure started to mount. The Birmingham Internal Affairs Division discreetly initiated an investigation into Molloy's behavior, driven by escalating public indignation. An anonymous leak emerged online, disclosing that Molloy had faced at least 5 prior complaints regarding racial bias and excessive force. All were sent away without the opportunity for a hearing. The complaints had begun to make their rounds on national news. Elijah Cross made his way back to the courthouse the next day. On this occasion, he took his place in the final row of the courtroom. Absent from the limelight, no declaration. He stood there, a silent figure, his posture impeccable, hands gently placed atop a neatly folded coat, eyes keenly observing the world around him. Maya Jackson was the first to notice him. She returned not merely as a law student, but as an observer of something far grander than the confines of case law. The blaze within her heart still flickered fiercely. She settled into the seat next to Elijah, a flicker of hesitation coursing through her as she pondered whether to break the silence. There was no necessity for her to do so. Viewed from the rear, the courtroom appeared unchanged. Judge Hadley maintained her icy composure. The bailiff's expression was a mask of inscrutability. Molloy lingered by the door once more. Yet this time, his looks were more cautious, less confrontational. Marcus maneuvered himself to the witness stand. His voice emerged slowly, each word tinged with the weight of years and sorrow. "I lost my leg in Kandahar," he said, directing his gaze toward the jury. "The man who rescued me is seated just over there." With a gentle yet unmistakable purpose, he directed his attention to Elijah seated in the back row. Elijah Cross sought no accolades. He arrived not seeking gratitude. Yet, if the law turns a deaf ear to a war hero, then to whom will it lend its attention? Silence enveloped the courtroom. A young lad in the gallery glanced back at his mother once more. "Mother," he murmured, pulling gently at her sleeve. Why did the police inflict harm upon him when he was a hero? She remained silent. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. The protest outside continued to grow in intensity. Flags fluttered in the breeze. Voices started to swell, not in fury but with determination. Veterans, teachers, nurses, and a diverse array of young and old faces united beneath a single banner. Elijah remained silent before the cameras. He did not engage with the media. Upon being approached by a journalist for a statement, he merely shook his head in response. Once more, Maya made her way toward him. Her voice was soft, filled with a sense of urgency. "Why do you remain silent?" "They await your arrival." Elijah locked eyes with her. He remained silent for an extended moment. Then gently, as though imparting wisdom rather than standing his ground, He responded, "I did speak in the manner of my rising." That was everything. That solitary phrase soared beyond the speed of any mere soundbite. In mere hours, it permeated the landscape, cited in articles, emblazoned on signs, and disseminated across every nook and cranny of the internet. I did express myself, in the manner in which I rose. The phrase transformed into a powerful call to action, resonating not only with Elijah, but also with every subtle gesture of dignity that had been overlooked. With that, the facade of invulnerability surrounding Officer Malloy and the protective system he embodied started to fracture. This time, the silence offered no shield for him. It was condemning him. The morning following the broadcast of the footage on national television, an unmistakable change swept across the nation, not merely in headlines or hashtags, but also in the intimate spaces of living rooms, the solemnity of veterans' halls, and the gravity of courtrooms. Individuals straightened their posture. Attention was captured. Precisely at 8:30 that morning, retired General Robert Langley made his live appearance on CNN. His voice, steady yet resolute, bore the burden of years spent in service. The anchor inquired about his thoughts on the video that had recently captured widespread attention. He remained unyielding. He remained utterly still, his gaze unwavering. He merely stated, "We are indebted to him, and we have let him down." He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "That man bore me on his back through the hail of sniper fire in Fallujah. Medals were bestowed upon him by America. Yet, within the confines of that courtroom, he was regarded as nothing more than an intruder." The clip surged into the digital realm, captivating audiences everywhere. In a matter of hours, the National Veterans Council released an open letter. The correspondence was directed to the governor of Alabama. In striking bold, the title proclaimed, "When silence is betrayal, we demand accountability." On that day in Birmingham, an unusual stillness enveloped the courtroom. Unusual stillness enveloped the courtroom. Yet, just beyond the threshold, a swelling assembly of veterans gathered on the courthouse steps, some seated in wheelchairs, others leaning on canes, each holding signs that conveyed a unified message. "He battled on your behalf. Now, stand and battle for him." Marcus Hale, perched in his weathered army wheelchair, approached a local reporter accompanied by a camera crew. His voice resonated softly yet distinctly. "He claimed he once rescued me amidst a hail of bullets. He claimed he once rescued me amidst a hail of bullets. I shall repay the kindness in full view of the lenses." The evening news echoed with his words. Yet by dawn, they had transformed into a call to arms. The footage looped endlessly, intertwining with Maya Jackson's recording of Elijah being forcefully brought down to the earth. With every broadcast, the ranks of the protests swelled, drawing in more voices to the cause. A collective of law students hailing from Howard University initiated a letter-writing campaign directed at the Justice Department. During a live broadcast, the mayor of Birmingham was questioned about his stance on an investigation. He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. That moment of uncertainty led to a decline in his approval ratings. Within the confines of the police department, an undercurrent of tension lingered. Soft murmurs traveled among the ranks. Officer Malloy found himself summoned to a private meeting with Internal Affairs. A few officers remarked that he emerged looking quite pale. Some claimed he brushed it aside with a laugh. Yet, the city remained silent. A week later, Elijah Cross found himself in possession of a formal invitation. A special hearing on veterans' rights and racial discrimination was convened by the United States Senate. His presence was desired. He hesitated before responding. Maya discovered him perched on the bench outside the courthouse, his gaze fixed on the very doors that had witnessed his fall just days before. She perched next to him, caught in a web of uncertainty about whether to break the silence. Yet, after a brief pause, she acquiesced. "Elijah," she whispered, "they are listening now. Your voice is what they seek. Your voice resonates for countless others." He faced her, his expression etched with unspoken words. He faced her, his expression etched with unspoken words. "I have already completed that task." As I rose to my feet, she averted her gaze, suppressing her feelings, yet managed to nod. On that very day, a mural started to emerge in the heart of downtown. A collective of seasoned artists commissioned it. On one side, it depicted Elijah in uniform, heroically bearing a fellow soldier through the swirling smoke and searing flames. On the other hand, he knelt, bloodied, gathering scattered papers in the courtroom. Amidst the backdrop, Inscribed in soft golden hues, the words resonate. Justice doesn't wear a badge. It possesses a spine. At this point, the narrative had reached a worldwide audience. News anchors engaged in a spirited discussion regarding the influence of race within the legal system. Civil rights leaders have urged a reevaluation of the procedures governing court security. Families previously silent on the subject of military service found themselves inquiring about the treatment of veterans. Yet, Elijah Cross chose to remain silent. He refrained from issuing a statement, avoided the spotlight of a press conference, for the world had already listened to his voice. Within the stillness, during the autumn season, in the manner he rose once more, and in the manner that silence resonated powerfully enough to rattle an entire city. The courtroom brimmed with an unprecedented crowd. Not even for the prominent drug trials or the political scandals that occasionally swept through Birmingham. Yet, on this occasion, the seats remained unoccupied by those driven by curiosity. Their ranks were populated by those who had answered the call of service. Individuals clad in uniforms, both male and female. Those who have served in the armed forces, families of Gold Star heroes, emerging cadets, and Maya cradled her phone against her chest as if it were a cherished heirloom. At the heart of the unfolding drama stood Elijah Cross, standing tall. Quiet. The hearing welcomed the public. The back of the room was adorned with an array of cameras. Every prominent news organization had dispatched a representative. A heavy tension enveloped the space, as though the very walls were preparing for the unfolding drama. As the judge signaled with a nod, Maya moved forward with purpose. Silence prevails. Without any celebration, a quivering thumb dances across the surface of the screen. The video commenced its playback. The silence was palpable, devoid of any background music. No edit required, merely unedited visuals. Elijah was cast down to the earth. The papers danced through the air. Marcus raised his voice. The innocent voice of the child inquiring, "Why?" Elijah's blood lay on the marble floor, glinting under the courtroom lights, reminiscent of something sacred that had been spilled. A gasp escaped the lips of a woman in the gallery. A man murmured, "God help us." For a brief moment, even the reporters paused their typing. In the stillness that enveloped the space, Marcus propelled himself forward, deftly adjusting the American flag pin on his lapel, and turned to confront the room. A man bore the weight of 3 soldiers on his back, navigating through the hail of enemy fire, his voice steady yet tinged with anguish. I found myself among their ranks. The military referred to him as a phantom, a specter, for he always vanished without a trace. Yet today, he found himself pulled across the floor, a trespasser in a land that once felt like home. He halted, his breath coming in heavy gasps. This courtroom sought to belittle a man who bore the weight of America. Elijah rose, calm and unwavering, neither rushed nor reluctant, simply resolute. Each motion resonated with years of unwavering commitment and grace. He averted his gaze from the cameras. He gazed upon the crowd. Every visage, every gaze. "I bled for this flag," Elijah declared. His voice resonant, steady, and unwavering. Not seeking your validation, not intended for your ease, yet for something grander, equity. He refrained from raising his voice. He remained composed. Yet the silence that ensued resonated more profoundly than any blast. Even the judge inclined slightly forward, as though Elijah's words had penetrated a realm untouched by the confines of law books. Officer Malloy, positioned close to the aisle, fixed his gaze on the floor, his previously resolute jaw now quivering ever so slightly. When prompted to speak in his defense, he parted his lips, yet silence enveloped him. Only one crisp inhalation, and then a profound stillness enveloped the space. The presiding officer directed their gaze toward the court clerk. In effect, from this moment onward, Officer Malloy has been placed on suspension while a formal review and internal investigation are conducted. A whisper floated through the air, yet no applause followed. The atmosphere lacked any sense of victory. It was a moment of reckoning. The judge paused, casting a glance downward at the bench. For a fleeting instant, it appeared he might overlook the escalating warmth, challenging the integrity of the court. Yet, from the periphery, a voice emerged. A high-ranking federal ethics official is taking the initiative. The court is now compelled to confront the inaction witnessed from the bench during the incident. Your Honor, a formal request has been made to address your silence concerning the civil misconduct observed within this chamber. The judge's eyes widened, caught off guard by a revelation he had desperately sought to ignore. His gavel lay just inches away from his hand, yet he refrained from grasping it. Elijah, remaining upright, offered a single deliberate nod, not out of defiance, not in wrath, yet as if to declare, "Behold the revelation." The session concluded in silence, devoid of applause or handshakes, only a hushed respect. As Elijah made his exit, the crowd rose to their feet. A few offered their salutes. Several lowered their heads, yet silence reigned supreme, for there are moments when the truth speaks softly, yet profoundly. It simply requires room to assert itself. Silence enveloped the cemetery, a stillness that allows the universe to exhale gently. The wind whispered softly through the trees, caressing the lines of white stones that stood resolutely, akin to silent sentinels. Every single one bears a name, a singular existence, a recollection. Elijah Cross moved with deliberate grace, each step gently kissing the ground beneath him, as though he feared to disturb the echoes of history. He held a modest bouquet of lilies, their stems glistening with moisture, encased in unadorned brown paper. The atmosphere enveloping him was sharp and invigorating, infused with the fragrance of pine and a subtle hint of something ancient. A realm of the divine. He paused before a grave, its flat stone bearing the etched names of two souls, intertwined in memory. Their own, hers first, below. A solitary phrase etched profoundly into the granite. She mended what others shattered. He knelt with deliberate care, his knees protesting from the weight of past injuries that lingered like shadows, and gently placed the flowers on the ground, cradling them with both hands. His fingers hovered, gently tracing the name as though seeking to sense her heartbeat through the frigid stone. "I made it," he whispered. Yet the wind whisked his words away before they could touch the earth. A gentle squeak of wheels echoed from behind him. Marcus drew near, deftly maneuvering the chair along the uneven gravel path. Resting on his lap was a meticulously folded American flag, its triangular corners sharp and secure, the blue field of stars lying above as if in a gesture of respect. His words were few. He paused beside Elijah, gazing at the grave, then up at the sky, before carefully placing the flag next to the bouquet. "For the man who rescued me on 2 occasions," he spoke softly. In Kandahar, a moment unfolded. In a courtroom, another chapter began. Elijah remained silent. There was no necessity for him to do so. The stillness that enveloped the two men was profound, yet it bore no weight of discomfort. The silence enveloped the room, a profound stillness that spoke volumes. A young boy strolled past, grasping his mother's hand, the very same child who had been in the courtroom. His gaze met Elijah's, and for a fleeting instant he paused, then softly pulled at his mother's coat sleeve. "There he is," he murmured gently. He was the one who rose when others remained seated. Elijah's mother gazed at him, her eyes filled with a profound understanding, and offered a subtle, respectful nod. She grasped her son's hand tightly, and together they proceeded along the path, the sound of their footsteps fading into the distance, accompanied by that solitary sentence suspended in the golden glow of the late afternoon. Elijah rose once more, this time with a measured slowness, yet unwavering. He gazed across the expanse of headstones, some adorned with blooms, others marked by flags, and some left bare, devoid of any tribute. For what felt like an eternity, he remained motionless, his shadow elongated across the verdant grass as the sun dipped slowly behind the trees. Silence reigned, devoid of words, melodies, or the sound of clapping hands. Only the whisper of the wind and the echoes of memory, accompanied by the stirring realization of a nation on the brink of understanding. The bronze statue had only recently been unveiled, yet it appeared as though it had always claimed its place at the steps of the Jefferson Courthouse. Neither towering, the artist had not captured him in uniform or in the midst of a stride. His chest bore no medals. Elijah was portrayed as he had appeared that morning in court, seated with a folder delicately placed on his lap, his gaze directed forward, not aggressive, but unwavering, as if he were still searching for something significant. A modest assembly had convened that morning. There were neither marching bands nor speeches delivered by mayors or governors. Simply embrace the quietude that carries a sense of respect without the need for proclamation. Birds danced among the branches in the vicinity. A gentle breeze caressed a solitary white flower resting at the base of the statue, while the newly polished plaque glimmered in the soft embrace of the morning light. The inscription bore a simplicity that was striking. He remained silent, standing resolutely. He shifted the very fabric of existence. In the shadow of the statue, Marcus Hale sat silently in his wheelchair. He donned his service cap, freshly brushed, along with the same jacket he had worn the day Elijah rescued him from the hail of gunfire. He lifted his hand with deliberate slowness, maintaining the salute with unwavering resolve, not to the government, nor to a courtroom, but to the man who had once pulled him through bloodied sand, and then across a room steeped in indifference. A short distance away, Maya Jackson was immortalizing the scene with her phone. Yet this time her intent was not for the sake of virality. It was unnecessary. She captured a stillness that echoed the statue, remaining motionless and silent, her gaze mirroring the bronze's sheen. This had transcended mere protest. It was a vow, a solemn promise echoed in their hearts, a reminder of those who had risen while others remained seated, who had shed blood while others merely observed. As the crowd gradually started to thin, a recognizable silhouette emerged at the periphery of the square. A boy, perhaps 8 years of age. The very same boy who had stood in the courtroom weeks earlier. With a firm grip on his mother's hand, he gave a gentle tug, his finger directing her gaze toward the statue above. "Mom," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. He was the one who rose to the occasion when others remained seated. She gazed down at him, offering a nod, and the boy turned his attention once more to the bronze figure. After a prolonged silence, he murmured, "One day, I aspire to be like him." They lingered in that moment, suspended in time. The child remained quiet, his small hand gently clasping hers. Unbeknownst to them, the camera lenses lay in close proximity, capturing the moment, while a journalist diligently recorded their actions in a notepad. They had no intention of coming for that. They had arrived to witness the essence of dignity, unburdened by the need for explanation. Marcus approached the statue, carefully placing a folded American flag in a clear case beneath the bronze hand. "For the man who rescued me on 2 occasions, he murmured softly, almost inaudibly. Once amidst the chaos of a battlefield, once within the solemnity of a courthouse, and on both occasions without seeking anything in return. Within the courthouse, nestled behind the statue, a transformation in policies was quietly taking shape. Protocols for training have been revised. The complaint systems have undergone a thorough overhaul. Officer Trent Malloy found himself stripped of his duties, his badge slipping into retirement with a hushed finality. The judge, who remained silent throughout that pivotal hour, found himself under public scrutiny and was now confronting an ethical review. The system remained intact, yet it bore a fissure at its very core. Though Elijah Cross rarely found his voice and never raised it, his mere presence disrupted the serene quietude that enveloped the room. In the weeks following the incident, his name had become a focal point in ethics classes across schools. Across the nation, veterans donned pins that bore the simple message, ex-churches illuminated candles. Online forums engaged in fervent discussions about his silence. In the heart of Birmingham, a growing number of individuals started to confront the questions they had long evaded. Elijah had not set foot in the courthouse since that fateful day. He conveyed all that was necessary with minimal words. Every Sunday, he made his way to his wife's grave, bringing fresh flowers and taking a moment to sit in quiet reflection. At times, Maya would accompany him simply to absorb the words he spoke. At times, Marcus would pull up alongside him, engaging in conversations about baseball or the war. Yet, Elijah remained still, allowing the wind to weave through the trees, his silence articulating a profound sense of dignity. The statue transcended mere monumentality. It was a recollection forged in metal, A gentle reminder that true strength often speaks in whispers. Justice, at times, arrives cloaked in the garb of humility. In that solitary act of defiance, a man, devoid of any anticipation for recognition, stirred a city that had long since become accustomed to averting its gaze. As you stroll by the courthouse in Birmingham, take a moment to pause and gaze into the eyes of the metal figure standing there. Anger will not be present in that place. Pride will elude your grasp. A question awaits your thoughtful response. Not all tales require a storm to leave their mark on the world. In a bustling room, it is often the silent figure, standing resolutely without uttering a word, who etches the most profound impression on those around him. Elijah Cross remained silent. He refrained from seeking the spotlight. Yet his quietude resonated with a structure, compelling an entire city to heed its call. His narrative serves as a poignant reminder that dignity often whispers, and courage may not always manifest as a battle. At times it appears as though one rises, marked by wounds yet unyielding. If this tale resonated with you, consider taking a moment to express your appreciation for the video, share it with someone who values quiet strength, and subscribe to Mr. Mac's Stories for more impactful true-to-life narratives like this one. Your support enables us to persist in celebrating voices that history frequently overlooks. Each share, each comment, each subscription serves as vital fuel for our mission to illuminate the stories that truly deserve to be etched in memory. For memory holds the key to strength. Here at Mr. Mac's Stories, we ensure it never fades away. I appreciate your time and attention in watching. Remain courageous, remain compassionate,